This is Flipping Table. That was enough. This is Flipping Tables, a podcast about culture, gaming, technology, and all kinds of other interesting stuff. I'm one of your hosts, David Lyons.
And I'm Mike Edwards.
I think we have to start. I don't want to read this word for word. Actually, I want you to do this. I want you to do this follow-up. But don't read it word for word, especially because there are some completely ridiculous typos that we just copy-pasted right in.
Why wouldn't I read this word for word?
All right,
the beginning is so good.
All right, go for it.
All right, from one of our listeners in follow-up. He said, Brocasters, sorry if the grammar in this message sucks. I'm listening to your podcast on my commute into work, and I'm trying not to kill myself while driving. We agree with the front pocket wallet situation. I moved to that many years ago when I had a rather large, regular-sized wallet in my back pocket, and I started losing sensation in my big toe on the top, and this is because of the tilting of the pelvis and the pushing on the nerves that go all the way down to the foot. Cool for anatomy and understanding the human body, but not cool for my great toe. In my wallet right now, I have a driver's license, some cash one, debit card one, credit card, my health insurance card, which I needed to show them to get my flu shot, my Heart American Association. It's not what it says. It's me reading it bad.
Well, this is not an easy read.
Yeah. CPR certification card, my dental benefits card. For some reason, Siri decided card needed to be attached to whatever the next word is every single time.
Yep.
Dental benefits card, and one Lamar's Donut Lovers card. Don't judge me. Cheers sent from my iPhone. This was from our listener, Mike.
Yeah, and it's important to note that that whole thing had like 2 periods in it. No commas, no question marks. Oh, there's one. Brocasters, comma, which I can't believe.
Well, if you actually say the punctuation, it'll add it in as you dictate, but he clearly was just going stream of consciousness.
First, I don't know if I self-identify as a brocaster, but he must have said bro hyphen casters, comma.
Yeah,
because there's no way that was in the dictionary.
Yeah. I wonder if he had to like try a couple times.
Yeah, no, Siri, no, start again. No, brocasters, add the dictionary. So, okay, this is cool because one, it's just anything that confirms that what I'm doing is popular is always nice. So
always happy to hear something I've done that someone else thinks is great.
Yeah. Yep. So he went down to the small wallet. I guess he was actually suffering great toe related issues. So that's a bummer.
Toegate.
Are we doing that? But this is cool. Someone was willing to put their life at risk to type out this message with a lot of terrible spelling and punctuation errors to give us feedback. That's nice. That means that this was more important than them surviving their commute to work. Thanks, Mike. And I have to follow up. So the plastic card, yeah, it does. I watched their little promo voiceover xylophone Apple wannabe commercial, and it actually does. You can sync like RFID to it, which is like, okay, it's like now I'm listening. Like, okay, so now I can replace my subway card and not the sandwich, but the train. I can replace my card to get into work, to unlock the door like that.
All your rewards cards too.
That may actually be worth like $100 to me. I don't know how much if the thing costs $200-$300, it's not that important.
I still think it's a niche product.
It totally is, but I would enter into that niche if I felt like there was something I could actually get out.
You would scratch that niche. I'm sorry.
I love a good pun, and I'm waiting for you to give me one.
I feel like no, the best puns are the ones that make you physically like wince.
I can't.
Why?
Yeah, I can't remember. There was
that
some
is
comedian,
what a great pun is.
Yeah, there's some comedian who has a whole thing about how like a pun that your first reaction isn't cringing, isn't technically a pun. Like it's just a joke.
Yeah, you should like feel like you want to punch the person at least a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah. So if you see like their fist clench up, it's like, oh, that was a good punch.
It's like, you son of a bitch.
So, and this may actually become kind of part of the episode at large, but I had a realization about spoilers that I think after all of my talk about how spoilers don't matter and everybody should just shut up in science and psychology, I found a time when spoilers are spoilers to me. When spoilers is spoilers. And it's when the ending turns out to be really, really terrible. So
Okay.
I have a modern specific example for this, but I don't want to spoil it for anyone. So I'm going to go back to an older example of the show Lost. Did you watch Lost?
I watched part of the first season. I said I'm going to wait,
Okay.
and then I haven't gone back.
So you sensed that maybe there was something foul coming.
Some aimlessness.
Yeah. So for anyone who hasn't watched Lost, all you really need to know is that it famously nosedives like midway through the third season, where they just start introducing nonsense and never answering
They're
any
the
of these
story
riddles.
embodiment of that Onion story that was, I fucked my way into this mess. I'm gonna fuck my way out of it. It's like, we nonsensed our way into this mess.
Yeah. So and it's particularly funny to me if you kind of follow like the meta narrative of Lost, that the writers and directors in an interview, I think it was actually it was Abrams, right? J.J. Abrams. I think at one point he said in an interview,
Damien Lindelof.
I don't know who that
He
is.
did Prometheus script, which is also famously frustrating.
Okay, so there you go. So there's like there's a pattern with these people. But J.J. Abrams actually said at one point, we haven't, this was early on, like right after the first season, middle of the second season, we haven't introduced anything into the show that can't be explained by science. And that was like,
That was a great story that he just told there.
cool story, bro. And at that point, that may have been true. But anyone who stuck it out with Lost, and I made it to like the middle of the fourth season, knows that they just start making crap up. And see, I came to Lost like years after it was over because my wife was a big fan when it was new. And she did things in a very like old TV kind of way. Like her and her friends got together and they had Lost like premiere parties when they were episodes and they watched them together. And that's fine. Like I don't have anything against that. Unfortunately, coming into that show years after it was over and hearing all the complaining and all of this, like I knew the ending was terrible and that there really isn't an ending.
Yeah.
Like it just stops without ever explaining anything. And that is a kind of spoiler I can't tolerate because the
Now
first
your will to go through it is destroyed.
well, it's now like so. I keep using the murder mystery example because it's just really easy, low hanging fruit. But if you're watching a movie like The Sixth Sense and there's the big twist
Or Clue.
Clue, okay, so you're
Great movie.
yeah, it is. But it's like if you know who actually is the murderer in Clue.
There's like 3 different endings.
Okay, so it's Colonel Mustard with the candlestick. So if you know going in that he's the murderer, I don't know that I actually believe that ruins the movie because it's a good movie.
Yeah. To me, it's what that ruins about movies with twists is movies with twists get to lead you on for a while. And like you're caught up in the drama of maybe it's this guy.
Yeah.
And if you just
That's-
know the
yeah.
ending, you're like, fuck that. It's not this guy.
See, and we've hit the crux of it. I don't experience that, and the science
You are missing human pieces.
and science says that I am right for not losing out on. Okay, but we've talked about that. But here's where I do get caught up with Lost in particular, and this other newer show. It was How I Met Your Mother. The ending sucks. So, with Lost in particular,
It was also the entire point of that sitcom.
yeah, right. The whole first season, I was like, oh, this is okay. I see like how people got into this, and there's some drama and there's some mystery. And then during the second season, I was like, okay, they're introducing a whole lot of questions here. You're gonna start answering some of these questions, like what's going on here? And then midway into the third season, I just had this like dark realization where I was like, oh, oh, they're never going to explain any of this. This is what everyone hated about this show.
Yeah.
So then every time like a new thing would happen, I would just catch myself like, well, I don't fucking give a shit about this because they're never going to explain it.
I think I figured out the analogy for this. It's Lost is a MacGuffin turned into a cancerous tumor where it just grows and grows of what's in the briefcase times a million, and they're never going to tell you or show you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like in Psycho, after that first scene with the briefcase, they never talk about or show the briefcase again. It's left to the viewer to obsess over the briefcase.
Yeah.
Lost is like if they never pan away from the briefcase ever. Like you can hear shit going on nearby, but the camera is just on the briefcase.
And I checked out that the only mysteries I know about are some numbers, a hatch, and a smoke monster, and that's it.
Yeah, so the smoke monster turns out to be way more complicated than is necessary.
Okay.
The hatch, they go in there. It's a bunker. And the numbers are spy numbers, which is like, that's a real thing. Like before we had other,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, they do explain some of the mysteries, but it's like, they're little pieces. It's like the big, how the hell did that happen? Like there's this one
Time traveling and...
Yeah, literally time traveling. The island can just magically like bamf from place to place, Nightcrawler style.
It can badass motherfucker from place to place.
Yup. Yeah. So
A lot of swearing in this episode. Sorry.
a lot of swearing in this episode. So this is. I'm just gonna go ahead and if you have not watched the ending of How I Met Your Mother, fast forward 5 minutes. It will not take me more than 5 minutes to crap all over this. It turns out in the ending of How I Met Your Mother that they just crap all over the point of the entire series and he ends up with Robin. And since we've already totally ruined our iTunes not explicit rating, fuck that. That is not what that show is about. It turns out that it's a 9-year of him trying to justify to his kids that he's going to sleep with their aunt. Like that is not a satisfying ending.
No, it's like, oh, so you're a shithead.
Yes. And now finding that out 8 seasons in, that's how it's going to end. And now I'm trying to watch through the 9th season. I'm like, oh, that was sweet. Too bad they're going to crap all over it in just a few short episodes. Or like, oh, look, that character talked to the wife or the mother, and then the mother ends up doing this other thing that like inserts her into the situation. If that hadn't happened, she never would have become the mother in How I Met Your Mother, but it doesn't matter because she fucking dies. Like, it's just this long, slow march toward this unpleasant nonsense. And I'm sitting there with my wife watching How I Met Your Mother and just crapping all over the episode we're watching. And I was like, I had this like mind blow moment where I was like, this is it. This is how other people feel when they find out who the murderer is. I should stop telling people who the murderer is. And I was already, to be fair, I was already of the mindset that I should not spoil things for other people just because it doesn't bother me.
Because they care.
Yes, but that was sympathizing. Now I can empathize. So
it's now emic, not just edic.
So yeah, that's my thing. So if you're busy scrubbing through on your podcatcher, I'm done talking about How I Met Your Mother.
Yep.
So
he just ends up with Robin.
Douche. Carolyn's gonna hate you if she cares about this show. So all right, go ahead. I had my rant. Go ahead.
So that's our follow-up, and we're just going to crash right into a complete segue into some other topics. And in tech news, I was sort of blown away that apparently the nation of China is conducting a phishing attack.
Do you mean the People's Republic of China?
Yes, the People's Republic of China. Here's the headline: staging a nationwide attack on iCloud and Microsoft accounts. Apparently what's happening is they are intercepting certain IP address requests and sending users to a identical looking login screen so they can harvest logins, presumably to surveil people.
Yeah, which is, that's a classic man in the middle.
Yeah.
They control the networks.
When your entire nation can, or the People's Republic can have such a strong-armed internet, you can do things like this.
Yeah. I don't think the Chinese actually call their firewall the Great Firewall. Like that has to be a Western invention, right? That term.
I have no idea.
Because that's. I mean, I see it referred to that way in a non-humorous. Like people are not trying to be funny when they say the Great Firewall or such and such a news site is blocked by the Great Firewall. Like that's just what it's called. Maybe at one time it was a joke, but there's no way that the Chinese call it that. That would shock and awe me. But this is exactly the kind of thing that always gives me pause, because certainly there are people in China who know what the Chinese government is doing to oppress them. But presumably there are lots of other people who either are in denial, or they are just genuinely not aware, or they don't understand the technology enough to understand what's going on.
I think there's also a segment that's like they believe a different kind of story about the purpose of the firewall, and have positive reasons in their mind that they think it's a good thing.
Yes, exactly that kind of thing. And the reason I say it gives me pause is because whenever I see something like this about a very large nation with a very large number of people who just statistically can't all be morons, and yet this oppression is allowed to continue through inertia or military force or whatever, I always kind of step back and I'm like, is this happening to me? Like right now, do I think I have access to all the world's information unfettered by the government? And really, I don't.
Yes.
Right? Because how would you know? No one knows they live in the Matrix, because no one can be told.
I remember
what the
a
Matrix
recent
is.
Daily Show where they were going to police departments and talking to other people and asking do you know how many deaths due to police action there are?
They were asking
annually?
cops these questions.
Yeah,
Okay.
because supposedly through some very, very, very weak legislation, police departments are supposed to maintain records of how often they kill someone.
One would think.
And it doesn't exist.
Oh, good. Good, great.
Or not in any form where regular people are allowed to look it up.
Good. Okay. So if, say, a journalist wanted to know about police brutality...
Yeah, there's nothing for you to look up, because if they do track it, they definitely don't make it available.
Awesome.
So there are little corners of just nope.
See, and that kind of, I mean, that's bad. That's no question bad. But that still feels like, oh, well, there's this one dark area of the government that they're ashamed of, and if it came to light, it would be really bad. So those are the areas that probably need light the most. But still, it feels like, oh, well, we have, there's...
We do have a Freedom of Information Act, which doesn't...
Everything's fine. I'm imagining, a field with a gate but no fence, right? So it's well, you could just, if you push hard enough, it'll swing open or fall down, and you can get to what's on the other side. But, this conspiracy theory wrought large, because there's no answer. A good conspiracy theory, it can't be disproven. But it's that really does make me suspicious. I mean, I'm fascinated by the North Korean experience, because again, there are certainly people in North Korea who believe the propaganda. Mm-hmm. They, believe great leaders sprung out of a double rainbow from a volcano,
and plenty of our nation believe our propaganda, that our little foreign entanglements are for a good reason and are keeping us safe, and are it's just, we believe the story. Maybe not personally us.
Right. Well, definitely you. But can you think of any American propaganda that borders on religious fanaticism?
Supporting Israel? I don't know.
Yeah, that's probably a weighty question to put you on the spot with. But, there are actually people in North Korea that believe their leader is a deity. And, that's how, the Egyptians saw the world thousands of years ago. It just seems weird that there's people in modern society who would think that. This obviously fallible human is somehow... he died.
Yeah.
What kind of deity just dies of old age?
There's definitely still belief that whoever is our leader is put there by God in our nation and deserves respect and to be followed. It's just they don't call him God, but they
Do you think
attribute a blessing.
We still have a large section of America that believes in divine right to rule?
not like the old British, like, I am king and because God made me king, but more like by the pure, they wouldn't call it chance of the universe, whoever is leader, God allowed this to happen, so we need to be obedient followers.
Yeah. So this...
Because there's verses in the Bible about like respecting your elders and your leaders no matter what, even if you disagree with them, kind of thing.
Yeah. No, you're making me realize, and I have to say, I'm not a religious person, so if I say anything that's unintentionally offensive, I really don't mean it. But there are people that I have met who seem like perfectly logical, reasonable people who will write something off as like, well, God works in mysterious ways. It's like, well, why understand anything ever if you can just explain it away like that? So if someone gets elected who is terrible for the country and for the world, it's like, well, he became president or king or glorious leader, so God must have wanted that to happen. Like, I have never understood that rationalization. That just seems like, eyes closed, fingers in the ears, humming loudly. And it's not that you need to find an explanation for everything, but saying that is finding an explanation.
Everything happens for a reason, David.
Exactly. Like, I don't get that kind of mentality. And that is rife in America.
Causality.
Yes, things happen and then other results come out of that. True story. But
so
that is rife in America. Like,
there are plenty of myths.
As bad. Yeah.
Yeah, there's stories and myths in America too that people just believe, because that's, I don't know, this is like my big thing lately. Is like, that's just what humans are. We are made of story. Even though we try to use science to be objective, like even huge amounts of the way we interact with science are basically just story too. And
yeah, and I guess my issue, and the segue from where we started is amazing. I'm so this is so fascinating to me.
This is why we do this, listener.
It's right, for you, not just for us, but also for you. But this is, I think the big difference, and I know it's nitpicky, but it feels like a significant difference to me, is a logical or deductive scientific style approach is welcoming to change and new information. Whereas a fanatical, not necessarily like organized religion, but like a belief-based approach is, finds change to be quite repugnant and does not want new information.
That's definitely one of the most like unique things about science as a meta-narrative is that it's a story too, but it's a different kind of animal than most of the other stories that form who we are.
Yeah, and I think that's important. Because, if you go up to someone in America and if you go to someone in a modern, civilized nation where their whole life is not governed by an oppressive government or an oppressive religious government, and you give them new information that contradicts what they knew previously, they would probably change their mind more easily than if you went to someone in, like, North Korea and you were like, oh, your entire view of the world is wrong. And here's proof. Like, that's hard for someone, to say to someone like, oh, you thought that the next street was going to be 5th Avenue, but it's actually 6th. You zoned out for a minute there while you're walking, is a lot easier to digest than everything you know about the world is totally wrong.
Yeah. But I do think a whole lot of what we like to lump in with science is culturally driven and story driven and just as transient or part of our identity rather than the facts of the universe than we think. Like, yeah, that we need the scientific method to try to get observer bias out of when we're trying to make discoveries about how the universe works. But like the fact that we have laptops that look like this and all this other stuff that we like is also sort of a product of that science is kind of also incidental. And so, like, there was an interesting question posed at this group I went to with David Thomas a few weeks ago, was like, there's this Penn Jillette quote, which is, he was basically, and this is a thought experiment that is impossible to actually try. It's just for speculation.
Isn't that a good thought experiment?
Yeah, and therefore it's vulnerable to people saying your premise is absurd. But his premise was, if you wiped out all human knowledge of all religion whatsoever and all human knowledge of science, that the religion would come back differently and the science would come back the same. Like, people would make discoveries, and that there would be new and different religious stories. And I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, the science is concrete. It's objective. It's like, it doesn't change. But then it was an interesting objection to this was one of the people in the group is this older psychologist dude named Joe. And he was like, his objection was, well, it's an absurd question because if you wipe out that, you've wiped out what makes us human. And so that we're not humans anymore. But that he was like, absolutely, like the tropes and patterns of religious story, of relation to a higher being, like all of that would come back and it would be the same. Like, maybe there'd be slight like, oh, we didn't call him Jesus or something. But like, he was adamant, no, the stories would be the same. It'd be sin, it'd be all these same things.
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting thought experiment, because I would say it's more likely to be considered the same if you're boiling it down to its core being. Like, the idea of belief in a higher power and using God from whatever kind of religion to explain the unexplainable, like that is across cultures throughout history. We've done it as far back as we know, and
this
we're
was
still
his
doing
point, was like, we are wired for religion. Like, as much as we, in our modern sensibility, want to use science to get out of the hand-wavy vagueness of like, well, God did it, that's it, we're done, no more discussion, that it's really, no, we're wired to believe in stories and tell stories and to know who we are by stories. And so that's not going away, even if you wipe it out and start from scratch.
So here is a crazy assertion. Is religion just a really early version of science? Here's what I mean. Follow me down this nonsense. When we didn't understand like how fire worked, we just attributed it to God. You know, like Prometheus stole fire from the gods. It is a godly power, and he gave it to humans. Like, that's where fire comes from. And then later, when we understood better how things like combusted and how materials burned and the chemical reactions, like, we stopped attributing it to Prometheus. And if 1,000 or 10,000 years from now, we're like, oh crap, it's actually this totally, we misunderstood, it's this other process, like, that will replace our current understanding of combustion. So maybe it's that humans are hardwired to find an explanation for things. And as a culture, human beings are constantly pushing the boundary of what it means to understand a thing, but individuals are frequently willing to stop. So like, you get someone who gets to the world is flat and they're like, that's fine. But then someone else is like, well, what's the world standing on? And then they come up with,
turtles.
Well, it's on these pillars, and then it's on a turtle, and then it's just turtles all the way down. And right, but then that's a good enough explanation for that person. And then there's another person who's like, it doesn't really line up with what we're observing because there's this thing called the horizon, and wouldn't stuff just be falling off the edge? And then, you know what I mean? So like, as a culture, we're constantly pushing the answer.
I guess, but I think what's interesting to me is that that's another story, and I think it comes up in the Enlightenment and pushing forward into the modern world, is this idea that we're always progressing, that mankind has gone from primitive to advanced, and that it's this inevitable like reaching higher and higher. And that's one story that I think our modern era thinks of itself as that way. Is it really that way? I don't know.
I mean, I would say yes. Like, I would say, based on my limited grasp of history, that there hasn't been any point where we brought progress of society and of technology and of culture to a standstill or even went backwards ever. We've always, sometimes it's really slowed down, but we've always been on this kind of steady march up. I should say we've always been on a steady march of change. We consider it to be an improvement, but There's always been this steady march of like
We're
cultural
also way
development.
better at killing each other.
We are way better at killing each other.
So there's different angles to it. I mean, how much of our technology is driven by creating weaponry? I mean, I think there's a lot of it.
Yeah. No, I mean, well, to wrap this way back to where we started, I mean, look at the collision you're having in China with what's considered a totally mundane consumer service, and it's smashing into this like oppressive military government regime, what they consider to be a protection,
Yeah.
against society's ills and the rest of the world. And all of that stuff, like the fact that iCloud exists at all and the fact that the Great Firewall exists at all came out of the DARPANET project and ARPANET, which was all military funded and government.
Well, even you could make an argument that the creation of computers was a lot to learn how to aim cannons. Like,
yeah.
how to, like, there's a plane going this way. Can we hit it? Yes. Okay.
So do you think it would, if we, let's just say magically there was suddenly peace, like there's a monkey's paw, but it's the left paw, so the wishes actually come out okay. And there's suddenly peace in the world. Like, would that retard the progress of technology? Because we no longer are working on new ways to aim guns?
Well, if we take the necessities of mother invention, it just seems like war is one hell of a necessity of like, we got to kill them or else they kill us. And so like you need some other motivation, I guess. Because if you're eating well and everything's fine, everyone's, relatively well off.
Well, I said peaceful, not a utopia.
I know, but I'm saying like, if no one needs anything, why invent things? And I think this gets almost into like the Gulliver's Travels. There's the chapter where he goes to like the horse people that are like, they aren't like regular horses, but they're talking horses.
Right.
And they're very, very thoughtful horses. And he's like, look at all these modern marvels, these machines. And they're all like, so you've created all this stuff that places requirements on you and you're complicating your life and it's not exactly like the hipster, like turn everything off, stuff, put your devices down, but it's sort of like an honest critique of like, what are you gaining?
Right. There's before I forget it, I think this is a George Carlin joke, but like any good joke, I don't know the author of. I'm just going to attribute it to George Carlin. It goes something like, the invention of the flamethrower proves that at some point in history, somebody said, I need to set those people over there on fire. But I can't reach them. And it's like I like the idea of something besides war maybe driving technology. And I mean you said it, like necessity is the mother of invention. So as long as we have some kind of need, I guess, because maybe it'll be like just a greater need for entertainment or comfort or travel or there's got to be something besides killing each other. All the people over there have been set on fire. We can stop inventing better flamethrowers.
Yeah. It's one hell of a motivator.
It is. So
and profit center.
Yeah,
this is the Metal Gear Solid 4 future. A war economy.
War has changed. So this whole thing with, and we should say this is not just Apple news, right? Because they're also, aren't they intercepting Microsoft accounts?
Yeah.
I mean, like, what is there to be done about this? Because in the article you shared, someone in the comments immediately was like, oh, you guys are just bashing on Apple. And then somebody else was like, oh, well, Google doesn't have this problem because they told China to screw off and they like basically just got out of China. And it's like, yeah, but they do really different things. And like Apple is trying to sell hardware that's linked to services, and Google is just like, fine, don't use our services. There's like 8 billion other people, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, can Apple do anything? Or are they just like, whatever, we just want 1 billion more customers?
Yeah. And will these tech companies be complicit with the way these government? I mean, China has been in the news for this reason for a long time because Google has had very public like spats, and like sometimes they compromise, sometimes they're like, nope, we're pulling back. It's like, it's clearly, it hasn't been like a simple interaction of like,
no,
We will bring our service to your nation.
So since we've already turned this into the crazy political philosophy hour, which I'm totally okay with. As long as China is only doing this to spy on their own citizens, do we have any kind of authority as not China to tell them to stop?
Well, it depends if you like the Martin Luther King Jr. line about...
An injustice anywhere? Is it injustice everywhere?
Yeah, is a threat to justice everywhere.
Yeah, that was close. I mean, yeah, morally, I would say yes. They should probably not be doing this. But at the same time, there is kind of that like, well, it's not our country. Look at what happens every time Americans try to police other countries. We go over there, kill a bunch of people, and then leave rubble. And we're like, bye. I mean, that has been like the story of, because, we're like World War I and World War II were like, I think most people would say just wars, right? That has not been the story of war in our lifetime.
Or at least our decision to get involved at that moment was mostly a reaction of moral outrage. We got to do this.
Yeah.
Where I wouldn't say that every action by every side ended up war is hell and people do shitty things in war, but...
Right. But I mean, that's my point. Is like there was... World War I and World War II, at least the way that they're marketed to people who didn't live through them, it's very much like this was so bad that all we could do to make things better was shoot other people in the face. Like that was our only remaining solution was face shooting and mustard gas. But nowadays it's like it's presented much more nuanced. And I mean, I know obviously the World War I and World War II probably had a lot of nuance, but historically, I don't think anyone would argue like, maybe we should just let the Nazis do their thing. They probably would have stopped eventually, Whereas like now it's like, what are we doing anywhere? So it's like, maybe we shouldn't just go march into China. I mean, I don't think we're going to put boots on the ground in China, but I mean, like they're,
So what I think is interesting is before our involvement, before it became like obvious that the Nazis were doing, like there was a lot of like covered up stuff that we didn't know was going on for a while before it was like, oh shit, no. But that there was this brief moment where like the Nazi Socialist Party like had roots in America, like we could almost like see it. Like it almost could have caught on with part of our nation of like some of the tenets of the party before we knew about concentration camps.
What was actually going on.
But also, I mean, internment camps, like we did some stuff that is not exactly easy to defend now.
No. No, I mean, this is why it's an interesting nuanced issue because it's like stopping the Nazis, indisputably a good thing. The way we got there by like just rounding up every Japanese person we could find and be like, hey, you want to go to summer camp until we decided you're not a threat? That'd be cool.
And then dropping nuclear bombs on civilian filled cities.
Yeah. Sent a real clear message, but also not a lot of Nazis in Japan.
No,
they were mostly in like that Europe area. Yeah. It's I don't know. Like I have none answers.
Well, this is why we get modern art movements too, of like the kind of the almost nihilist, like crazy surreal forms of art in the 20th century. It's just, I feel like it's just the psyche of the nation in response to what the hell, like like one of the most horrible things we've ever seen, and then we've become in some ways, and it's sort of like this big ambivalent mess.
When you stare into
and
the
so it's like I don't just want to paint still life anymore. Like, or
I can't
like
paint
now
another bowl of fruit.
I'm just gonna paint solid colors because I got nothing. I'm gonna splatter stuff because
I don't. It's just so dark. It's just all sad and dark. And
well, that's what I think was my original impulse to get us here, was that everything, like even if science is our little torch of trying to be more objective, like everything is so intertwined into our stories. And so even all our technology and all the things that result from our science are still expressions of our humanity. And it's just completely twisted up in it. You cannot separate it, because if you separated it, you would separate what makes you who you are from.
Yeah, I get that's trying to deny any aspect of your humanity is probably a great folly, but I do feel like there are people who use that justification to commit atrocities.
Oh, there are bad stories for sure.
Yeah, they're like, well, sometimes you just want to kill everyone, and that's just a part of who you are.
Yeah, not at all what I'm saying.
No, I know you're not. I know you're not. I know you, Michael, are not going to kill everyone, probably. Yeah. But I just think like it's like most things, it is probably one of the few things that really stuck with me from my like intro to philosophy class that I took in undergrad was Aristotle's virtue theory, which is basically extremes pretty much always bad. The virtue,
moderation, everything, even moderation.
Exactly. The virtue is almost always somewhere between the extremes. It may be closer to one than the other, but it's almost always somewhere between. Like he argued, he was like, killing people, always bad. Sometimes you use it to good ends, but the act of killing another human being is always bad.
Yeah.
So it was like, there are some just total bad things, but virtues are always between two extremes. And it's really hard to remember because it's so much easier. I should say, not remember, it's hard to act on because it's so much easier to just do things black and white. Right?
So you've almost described what me and Thomas joke about all the time as the teleological suspension of the ethical. So that
Go
mouthful.
on.
So this is why the story of Abraham is interesting, even if you're not religious. And even, I think, what was his name? Not Camus.
Jesus?
No. The atheist existentialist Sartre.
Okay.
He was also fixated on the story of Abraham because the story is he's told by God to kill his son as sacrifice.
Yeah, to like bring him up on the mountain.
Yeah. And so that's the philosophical question is like killing your son, bad, right? Like objectively, morally wrong.
Yes.
When God tells you to do it, not bad, right? That's the dilemma.
As a non-Christian, I would say no one has the authority to tell you to kill your son.
But that's the interesting existential dilemma for Abraham of,
right.
And, it wasn't like he was already at the altar. It's like he had to take his son for days, and his son's like, where are we going? It's like, well, we'll see when we get there.
Disneyland.
And so that's the interesting dilemma there. But yeah, with this Aristotle theory, like, yeah, killing people, bad, so it can be good still.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. We're now pushing the limits of my philosophy training. Because this is not a deep lake, but there's the argument over whether the ends can ever justify the means, and like at what's the ratio, like how evil can your means be, and then like how good do the ends have to be to justify those?
But
evil
there's
means?
also just endless arguments like can you justify ethical values?
Yeah.
In the first place,
you quantify them?
Whether on religious grounds or reason grounds, or is it all just a social contract of like, we'll just be happier if we don't kill each other. Please don't kill each other. Like,
yeah, it's maybe just not
utilitarianism or.
Well, I remember one of the questions they posed in that same, like 1,000 level course was something like, would you kill one person to save 100? And there were people in the room who were like, no, I could never kill another person. And there were people in the room who were like, well, it would depend. And me, I'm sure 10 years ago, but I mean, at the time I was like, yup. Because obviously, and then it's like,
but there are ethical.
What if that one person was going to be Einstein or was going to be the next Jesus? And it's
Yeah.
like, well, if I don't know that going into it, then I'm exercising the information I have available.
So it's ethical because of your level of information. So if you're more of an idiot, you can always be ethical.
Yes.
Which is an interesting horror. You could set up a very horrific situation.
Totally good.
Where someone is totally ethical and is just killing people.
Yeah,
because in their worldview, everyone's a monster and needs to be slain.
Yeah.
This is, I'm not letting you talk again. This is okay. I'm going to talk about I Am Legend, and if you want to see that and don't want it spoiled, you've been warned.
It turns out it has Will Smith.
It turns out he's the monster in the end, and that
Well, in the book.
And in the director's cut with the intended movie version.
Okay, because I was gonna say
theatrical cut, they just ruined it.
It's just zombies.
Motherfucking Will Smith. But
all right, go on.
oh, just that. Yeah, he's ethically protecting himself the entire movie, and then it's like, oh shit.
Oh wait.
They're terrified of him. He's a monster. And that's why they're like hunting him, because they're like, we have to kill this monster.
So then would I be right in asserting that ethics and morality it's a social construct, right? I mean, yes. Like nature
Some people don't think so.
Nature does not have ethics and morality in any discernible, observable sense, right? Like a bear does not feel bad when it kills something and eats it, ever.
Or it's just always acting ethically as a bear. It always feels great about it.
Well, the reason I'm asking this is...
Dogs seem to feel guilt.
And are we projecting what we would observe in other humans? But the reason I'm asserting this is because in your quandary about the stupid person killing people...
Being ethical while just doing awful things.
So they, in a vacuum... may be behaving ethically because they're operating on the information they have available. But for observers, it would not be ethical to allow them to continue. Like, we have to stop them as ethical observers.
So this is a frame of reference. Ethics are a frame of reference.
Yeah, I would say a little bit, because that kind of goes with acting on the information you have available to you. I mean, if... here's a really trite example. Someone breaks into your house in the middle of the night and you go downstairs and you're like, stop or I'll shoot. And they like rush at you and you shoot them and they die. And it turns out that they were just like blasted out of their mind drunk and they thought they were going into their own house and they came into your house because your door was unlocked. You weren't wrong to defend yourself. In hindsight, a mistake was made, but it doesn't become murder because you wrongfully defended yourself. I wouldn't say it does. This is no question the heaviest episode we have ever done. This is like, I feel like we have to change the whole title of the show.
Well, I think that's why like all the most horrific thing, it's why you posed the question earlier of like, is this happening to me? Like, am I part of a certain kind of information society where I'm not being told everything, or things are being taken or stolen or whatever? Like the institutionalized horrors it's really the interesting thing with the modern era. It's, the Soylent Green or the...
I've heard it's really good.
Or most of the... all the concerns about like outsourced labor, which seem very well-founded concerns about like, well, it's cheaper and you don't have to observe people's rights as much.
Yeah. If you're not looking, it's not happening.
Yeah. And
that's probably a good example of ethical, believing you're acting ethically because of a lack of information. Like if I don't know that they're being whipped in factories to build iPhones, then I can't be mad at it.
The frame of reference argument of like, well, most of the jobs in that nation are worse. So this bad job with terrible lack of rights is okay.
Yeah, and
in contrast.
Isn't that a fallacy? It's kind of like the fallacy of hypocrisy. Like saying that other jobs are worse doesn't stop that job from being bad. Like it doesn't make it good. It just makes it less bad.
But I think this is one that hits home as someone who loves cheap technology that, that's on the backs of people working for very little.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter that they're making more than they could make in most other options in their life. It's like, but we're subsidized.
Yeah. No, I've had this very crisis myself where I'm like, do I really need to contribute to this system more than I do? Even like where I used to live in Florida, I started recycling when it got below a certain threshold of effort. because in Florida it's really difficult to recycle anything.
Yeah.
But so it's like, it's good. I think it's a good thing to recycle. But when it was above a certain threshold of effort, I was like, it's not that important. And then once it got below that threshold, I was like, no, this is important. And that's where that's like, it's a little bit shameful, but it's like, I can't do everything always. As Louis C.K., to paraphrase Louis C.K., you can't have everything ever. You can't not have no things.
No, but like Aristotle would tell us, that's the extreme.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm tired.
This is harder than usual, than just being angry at things.
It is.
We should talk about Borderlands then.
Okay. You know what I need right now? I need a chase. You
need to drink some water, and I'll describe what Borderlands is before you explain how you hate played it.
That is what I did. Yeah.
So Borderlands is basically, it's been described as, it's a game. It's not massively multiplayer. It's multiplayer online. Basically, you got guns. It looks sort of like a comic book cutout cartoon sort of graphics. And you shoot people and you take their guns and you go through a little story. And you're basically always on the chase for that better gun or that better little attachment or rifle or whatever. And it kind of never ends. I mean, I think there's a story and there's an ending, but really it's kind of just an open-ended game where you just play.
Yeah, it has I think with Assassin's Creed, you called it Waypoint, the game. It kind of has that feeling.
Yeah. Or Icon Hunt.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a combination of like the modern GTA, Assassin's Creed style, like now go here, now go here, now go here, now go here, combined with the Diablo, like click until it's dead, pick up the stuff it dropped, click until it's dead, pick up the stuff it dropped.
But it's a shooter. It's a first-person version.
It is. And hate played it is probably a good description of what I was doing the other night. So I had this interesting conversation with my wife. I'm sitting there playing. I'm becoming increasingly frustrated because I'm just getting my ass handed to me. And I should stress at this point that if it hasn't become clear with the way Mike and I completely relentlessly mock dude bro shooters, I don't play dude bro shooters. I don't have anything against them. It's just not my jam. Just like I don't play sports games. Not my jam. So I'm not good at them because I have very little prior experience to draw on. So I'm fighting this boss and just getting completely obliterated. And my wife just very calmly is like, you really seem like you're having fun. Maybe don't play this. It didn't cost you any money. I got it as a gift from a friend. She was like, maybe just don't play this.
Maybe stop hitting yourself.
Yeah.
Maybe
you have a limited amount of time to play video games. Why don't you play a game like you want to play? And then at that point, my response was the childish, like, no, this game cannot tell me what to do. I am better than this game. And it's like, I love the humor in Borderlands, and I really love the like the aesthetic style and all like that. And it's like fun and kind of quirky. And I had to determine whether or not
even the implied suicide advertising.
Yes, that kind of stuff doesn't bother me. I know it bothers some people. Anyway, I had to weigh out, like, is the amount of hate playing I will have to do to get good enough at this game worth the enjoyment I'm presuming that I will get out of it, because I can make a logical guess, but I don't really know. And right now, I'm still on the side of yes. Like, I'm still playing, and I beat that goddamn boss. It took like 7 tries, and it also took a rage quit. Like, I stopped, came back later, had a cup of tea, had a little nosh, relaxed, came back, shot him in the face a bunch of times, collected loot. So it's like, I think we had discussed this previously, like, you do not have a problem giving up on a video game.
No.
This is why...
Don't care.
Yeah, this is why I have trouble reading books that do not come from certain recommendation sources, because I can't really just give up midway through. I have a hard time with that. Like one of the few games I've ever
Big art
quit.
commitment.
I am. One of the few games I have ever quit and will never ever go back to is Final Fantasy VIII.
Oh my God, I love that game.
And that's fine. You're entitled to your terrible opinion, but I didn't like it at the time, and now I have like a decade.
You couldn't even hate play it?
No.
Draw magic for
Nope.
like a few hours?
Nope.
But then you become so overpowered that the game is so easy.
Maybe this will be a future challenge where it's like Lyons has
It's
to
on the
play.
Vita.
Yeah, no, I have it I own it. Like, because Susan has it. So, I mean, the game is in my house in like 3 different formats. And I could also probably get it on Steam for $1.99. But this is, PC Final Fantasy.
Something's just wrong.
But this is like, I don't want to say it's a problem, but it makes me way more selective about my media because I have a very hard time saying, and then just kind of moving on. Like, we were talking about Lost. Like, I rage quit Lost. Like, I said, and I'm not really.
It was like a divorce. It wasn't
was.
like, I don't want to hang out again.
It was like a nasty divorce. It was like, I'm taking the kids.
We are fighting over the
Yes.
house, and that piano's mine.
Yes, and
We'll
I'm
saw
moving,
it in half if we have
moving to another state and getting a different job. I'm not going to give you my address. You can send the alimony checks to my lawyer. Like it was, and I've had just a quick side note. I really enjoy the hyperbole of extreme delivery. I mean, I co-founded a podcast called Flipping Tables. Like I enjoy it. I think it's fun. But in reality, I'm not always this person of extremes. But when it comes to rage quitting stuff, I rage quit with fierce,
like Windows.
fierce seriousness. Yes, exactly like that. And that's I'm not there yet with Borderlands. I don't think I'll get there because I am improving enough that I can enjoy it. More of my face shots are hitting faces instead of nearby walls. But I mean, I don't know how you do it. Like, I don't know how you can invest.
Counter-Strike. We should try it sometime.
Are you good?
Especially if you're not good. Yeah, I usually go at least even, if not positive ratio.
Ooh. So, and I mean,
But I put in like hundreds of hours at this point.
hundreds of hours of getting good at. So, at what point, or were you having fun the whole way? See, this is the thing is I
don't know.
I have to maybe redefine what I consider enjoyment. Like, as long as I'm not
Type 2 fun.
No, that's not what I mean. I mean, like finding joy in attempting, not finding joy in success, right? It's like enjoy the journey kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, because like I very much noticed that I was able to shoot the guy in the face because of all my missed face shooting. I eventually learned what would make me hit his
Like
face
the recoil of
and
the
not
gun.
miss his
and
face.
the-
Exactly. You know, and
That's a
all
big
that crap.
learning curve in Counter-Strike because
Yeah.
if you just hold down, shoot, your gun just goes all over and then
crazy.
you miss
Yeah,
and you're
the-
like, how did I not hit him once?
You get the little reticle spread
Yeah.
to let you know, like, you're doing worse, you're doing worse,
Now,
you're
that
doing
game
worse.
is brutal, and it's also a game where you die very fast, like 2 shots, 3 shots,
Yeah.
like almost like Clancy Rainbow Six level of just like,
And have you played any of the Borderlands games?
yeah.
Okay, so you know that,
I
like,
quit it after like 5 hours.
like a lot of modern games, the penalty for death is basically nothing.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Oh, some of your loot dropped. Go find your body.
not even that.
Not even that.
You just lose money.
It's like, put it on my tab.
Yeah, exactly. There's literally machines scattered throughout the wasteland that respawn you. So even in the game universe, you haven't. It's not like time reset like in Mario when it's like the little Mario X2 and then little Mario X1 and you're at the beginning of the level. It's like you literally just get reconstructed over there and then you're
Well, even
you're
like
down.
Bioshock does that. There's a Vita chamber and you just magically appear
Yeah,
and
yep.
you're back in the game.
Same kind of thing.
Not even like a you died, game over. It's just like, well, you're back.
Oh, you know what's it's Borderlands, the closest I've ever seen it to is Grand Theft Auto. You just wake up in the hospital, you pay the hospital fee, you're good. You still have all your loot.
Like Phantasy Star 2.
Everything's fine, yeah. And I'm a pretty big supporter of this methodology in gaming because if my goal is, press R1 until all the things stop moving, then pick up all the stuff that the things you shot dropped, then I don't really need a huge like, I'm not trying to master this skill. I'm basically shooting things until the next funny line is delivered from a side character. Like, maybe this should just be a movie or like an audio recording of funny lines from the characters.
I do think your mentality of like, I'm going to finish this or I'm going to see what's next is pretty common, because how else can you explain shitty games that people play endlessly? Free-to-play games, Candy Crush, all that stuff. It's just like, I'm just going to keep going. Is it
a slinger box? Is that what it's called?
A Skinner box. You always say slinger.
I always say slinger, and I do not know why. But yeah, so I mean, Borderlands is very much the like, ooh, what did he drop? Ooh, what did he drop? Ooh, what did I find? What did I get? What do I get? No, more stuff.
Yeah.
It's just like
red notification. What does it say? What does it say?
Yes. And I try to limit that kind of thing in my real life. Like, I've my notifications turned way down and stuff, but it's really addictive in video games. It's easy to have wasted 90 minutes and then realize, like, I accomplished nothing. I pressed R1 like a lot.
No, that's Kingdom Rush for me. I played through that game like 6 times. And like after you beat it, there's new levels that are hard as balls, and like I don't know, like you earn these little gold coins and then like you save up enough and then you're like, I'm just gonna like kick this level's ass by like having tons of extra money.
See, would you argue that at least in that case there's some like strategy you're putting into it? Like, you have to place your units and kind of get an idea.
Yeah.
So it's not just I pressed the button until I won.
Well, there are times where I'm like, am I enjoying this? Or am I just like, you know, like...
Am I just going through the motions?
Like Plants vs. Zombies, like I always think about reinstalling and going through again sometime. And I'm like, but really I'm just like anxiously like making sure I gather all the sun the entire level so that I can keep going. And like, after a while I'm like, this is kind of just stressful.
Yeah.
It's kind of just really stressful.
It is. Yeah, tower defense games are kind of like that because there's just this like onslaught.
I love them, I think.
Yeah. You know, I found one on Steam that I got through a Humble Bundle that I'll have to send you the link for. I think it's called crap. I'm actually going to fire up Steam now just to see what the title of this game is, because I can research stuff live on the show if I'm able to fill the dead air by rambling incessantly while I do it.
Even in meta form about
Defender's Quest.
Okay.
Yes, especially in meta form. God, what else would you do? Yeah, it's called Defender's Quest: Valley of the Forgotten. And it was originally
it's a colon title.
Yes, yeah, Defender's Quest :
How does zero punctuation do that?
I think he goes like, huh? like fighting back vomit,
like the
exactly. But so Defender's Quest: Valley of the Forgotten. I don't know. He must have to do 1,000 takes of that to get one where he doesn't giggle, or maybe he's just really practiced, which would be the 1,000 takes. So my idea holds. But it was originally a Flash game, so the graphics are very originally a Flash game. But I mean, that's fine. Like, it's a really fun tower defense game. It's got like a clever mechanic. The story's kind of funny. The writing is a little
But that's not why you play tower defense. Like the comic book portions of Kingdom Rush, I'm like skip. Could not care less.
But now, so again, it's time for another super violent segue. So now that we're going to talk about Defender's Quest, this has the coolest New Game Plus mechanic I have ever seen in a game that had New Game Plus. And I just saw your eyes kind of dart over to the clock. Do you want a cliffhanger? Do you want to talk about Defender's Quest next time?
I don't care.
Okay. So
sure.
You want? Okay. All right. There it is. All right. Mike called it.
Yep.
My hands
just
are up. Yes.
Stop.
Okay. So Mike, where can people find the incredibly lightweight show notes for this incredibly heavy episode?
At flippingtablespodcast.com/037. Zero. Zedro.
Not. That's it. Not 37. Yes. Flippingtablespodcast.com. /Zilch37. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch about all your crazy philosophy learnings?
Medwords on Twitter or pseudomichael.com.
Still fun.
You should watch the Zero Theorem.
Oh, should I?
Or we got to watch Brazil.
We're going to watch Brazil.
Oh, man.
Maybe this week. and then I can report on it. What everyone thinks of my opinion of like a 40-year-old movie. Is it that old?
It's
70s?
85,
80, oh, okay.
84, something like
It's
that.
getting up there. People can find me at LionsInBeta.com, LionsInBeta on Twitter. And I'm too tired to think of follow-up. Can you think of anything?
I think our topics were heavy enough. If someone wants to jump in,
I would love to hear
please do.
contributions from people. I just can't, for the life of me, think of anything specific. I'm exhausted.
Yep.
I'm going to go just sleep until next Tuesday when we record again.